Hi, and welcome to Tap into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox, and I'm the publisher of Tap into Bayonne, Tap into Jersey City, and Tap into Hoboken. Past couple of weeks, we've been talking about COVID-19. We've been talking about vaccinations. We've really spent a lot of time trying to focus on how we're going to get through this virus, this global pandemic that we've faced for a year now. But it hit us very close to home in the past couple of weeks, and that's the first thing we're going to chat about with Chris Halleron, our Tap into Hoboken reporter. Chris, how you doing on the other side there?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing better. You know,
Good.
it's not something I would recommend though.
No, so of course, to let our viewers and our readers know, so you tested positive. It was a little more than 2 weeks ago you tested positive with COVID-19.
It was about 3 weeks ago I tested positive. I had symptoms, which then inspired me to go get tested, and turns out it was positive. My son and wife tested subsequently, and my wife was negative, which is surprising. My son was positive. There had been some issues at his school, so we think that's how it got into the house, because I pretty much sit home in my sweatpants writing all day. So it was a mystery as to how I
Yes,
got it, but there it is. And
but this is it, right?
we've been dealing with it.
This is Yeah, this is the mystery of it, though, Chris. Yeah, as you said, I mean, and I know you've been very good since last March. You've been pretty much a homebody. I mean, we've seen each other a few times, and of course, you've gone out and you've covered some events. But it just shows we don't know still where this is coming from, or no matter how many steps we take, the hand sanitizing and the washing and the staying away from each other, it just keeps creeping up. And as you said, your son brings it home from school. You're in very close quarters there in your Jersey City home. Yet your wife, she never tested, and thankfully so. I mean, I'm glad Ann didn't come out
Yeah.
positive. But so what were some of the symptoms you faced? I mean, let's talk about this so our readers do know what to look out for. They should by now, but
Sure. It was fatigue was the main one. And still remains an issue. Just exhausted. More so than normal. I had some headaches that were sort of creeping up the back of my head and got pretty intense. And I had a little bit of congestion, but it wasn't too bad. But nonetheless, it was enough to the point where I felt the need to go get checked out. And lo and behold, there it was. So from there, I did have a couple days where the chest got really, really tight, and you're starting to think, I've heard this can go badly. Thankfully for me, it did not get too bad to the point where I had to go to the hospital or anything. But it's been a long recovery, and I'm still a bit foggy and a bit, dragging a bit, but coming along, thankfully. So.
you've now retested and you've retested negative. So, as far as that's concerned, you don't have the virus anymore. But as you said, you're still feeling some lingering effects. You're still fatigued, and you said you still had some coughing fits. Have doctors or anyone given you any sort of long-term prognosis, what you should expect over the next couple of weeks or months even?
So I went to the doctor 2 days ago for a checkup, the post-COVID checkup. We did some blood work, and we're waiting for that to come back. So I don't know any of the particulars. I was given an inhaler if the breathing does become an issue again. A lot of it's when I'm trying to sleep. I'll wake up out of sleep and gasping for breath. So that's kind of less than ideal. And so that lack of sleep has kind of impacted everything, and there's been a knock on from that. But as far as like a prognosis, no, I think it's one of these situations where it evolves, and it impacts people differently. And I've heard anecdotally from a lot of people that this is how it works, and this is what you're going to go through, and this is what you have to look out for. So just looking out for everything and taking care of myself in the interim.
Good. Yeah, Chris, do that. I mean, you've been doing a great job, even with the COVID-19 diagnosis. You've been keeping busy with the reporting, but please, keep feeling better, keep getting strong. On a more somber note, of course, we had a story earlier this week. A few residents in the Hoboken Center lost their lives to COVID-19. What was the story there, Chris?
So the Hoboken Community Center experienced a number of positive cases. There are 96 beds in the facility, I believe, of which 88 were filled at the time. There were tests given to voluntary tests administered to a number of those residents, and out of which I believe 20 came back positive. There were a number of there was one fatality recently. There was another fatality preceding that and another one preceding that, none of which have been officially linked to COVID. So
Right.
it's important that
That's important to
designation
know.
is made. However, there was a situation there and continues to be a situation that needs to be monitored. They're making sure that the COVID has been mitigated first and foremost. Residents have been given the option to stay elsewhere. The food pantry that's within the Hoboken Community Center is actually not physically within it, so it's a block away. So the food pantry is still up and running, and there's no problems there. However, there is a lot of high alert there for the developing COVID situation at the Hoboken Community Center.
And of course, I think we should note the Hoboken Community Center does absolutely tremendous work. And it goes back to what you experienced in your own household, Chris. We still don't know enough about this virus a year in. All the precautions the Hoboken Center has taken, it spreads throughout. I mean, they've been wonderful. They house people, they feed people, they clothe people, they educate people. So certainly no fault of their own. With that, Chris, we're going to take a few-minute break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened at the City Council meeting earlier this week. Thank you so much.
Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, Jersey City. Hudson County's only monument maker, serving all faiths and cemeteries. Design studio and large inventory on site. Cemetery inscriptions and custom orders welcome. Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, just south of Secaucus Road. Craftsmanship that will last for all eternity. Burns Brothers, Jersey City, Albert H. Hopper, North Arlington. Visit us on the net. Consumer Carpets, 3408 Kennedy Boulevard in the Jersey City Heights, your one-stop store for residential and commercial floor treatments, carpeting, linoleum, tiles, laminates, hardwood floors, area rugs, remnants, all major brands, all in stock. Free estimates, same-day installation. Consumer Carpets, it's savings, selection, installation. Credit cards and debit cards accepted. Financing available. Consumer Carpets, price to fit your budget, installation to fit your schedule. On the net at consumercarpets.com. Consumer Carpets, Jersey City, 201-792-2712.
Hi, welcome back to Tapped into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox, and I'm the publisher of Tapped into Hoboken, Tapped into Bayonne, and Tapped into Jersey City. Right now, we welcome Chris Halleron, our Tapped into reporter for Hoboken. He just filled us in on his own battle with COVID and some of the lingering effects he's still experiencing. We want to switch from that. We want to talk about a city council meeting earlier this week. So it was a pretty eventful council meeting. Chris, a lot happened on earlier this week, didn't it?
It was a pretty eventful meeting. There was certainly the order of the day. There was a lot on the agenda, which got addressed. But one of the more disappointing things was that there was an issue with comments on the Zoom feed in which derogatory comments were made of a racial nature, and that's had a real knock-on effect in the community because it's Hoboken's not a community that would stand for that, and so it was really disappointing to see. The origin of those comments remains unknown. It's currently being investigated by the Hoboken Police Department. They're tracking it was done electronically, so they're tracking the source of that input into the Zoom meeting. It was not on the public feed because Hoboken typically broadcasts their city council meetings on Facebook Live. So I think within the internal Zoom feed, there was some sort of comment section there that was being littered with all these comments. So what we're hearing happen was the comments were noticed by council members and screenshots and whatever else was taken and forwarded to the authorities, at which point the comments were removed. There's some questions about the process there about whether you can remove comments like that, but given the nature of the comments, they decided to make that decision. Meanwhile, they'll continue to be researched and investigated, and hopefully we find a conclusion to this, because racial comments are rare, but certainly have a history in Hoboken, and a very delicate one. And investigating the source of those comments and the source of racial and xenophobic comments in the community has been an issue in the past couple of years. So hopefully we get some closure on this one.
Yeah, I think, Chris, you'll agree. There's no room for these sorts of comments anymore. But unfortunately, this online nature of the way we're doing business, this virtual world that we've been living in for the past 12 months and will continue to live in, I think maybe it gives viewers and it gives people participating in these meetings beer muscles, maybe we call them, right? Or virtual muscles. I don't know
Sure.
what the right phrase is. So disappointing, though. But as you said, it was dealt with swiftly. Chief Ferrante certainly isn't going to mess around with an issue like this. And, woes be the person who was responsible for this in my mind. But Chris, in addition to that, they approved, they being the city council, approved a pretty significant redevelopment plan for the North End. Can you talk a little bit about that plan and, what that's going to do for the future of Hoboken?
It's going to open up a lot in the North End. It's been about 12 years in the making to have this plan, the development plan develop. There have been a lot of proposals over the past 12 years that have not met the criteria for the council and for the previous administration. So there's been a lot of frustration up on that North End because there are businesses that stuck their necks out and went up there, waiting for the promise of increased development, increased residential development on the North End of town. I remember when Joe Jones opened Carpe Diem, a bar up there. Everyone was like, okay, well, that's pretty far out there. We wish you luck. And he was sort of the guy that planted the seed up there. The Pilsner House came up. Mile Square Theater has been up there. Little City Books opened a place up there. So it's definitely an area that wants to have more residential, more of a residential foot traffic. And finally, we're getting there. And I think the big issue that sort of pushed this one over the edge was push it over the finish line was the addition of a 15th Street light rail, which is just amazing to have yet another stop within Hoboken that provides public transit and gets people up there and should definitely increase the viability of living in the North End.
And support for the plan has been pretty unanimous. I mean, it was an 8-1 vote with Councilman DeFusco abstaining on the vote, and he gave some reasons for that after the meeting, which we published to Tap into Hoboken. And of course, Fund for a Better Waterfront, they had a few concerns about which direction, some of the roadways are pointing people in and how the open space will be situated. Is that, am I summarizing that well for Fund?
Yeah, there's a Fund for Better Waterfront has a lot of concerns about the green space and how that green space will be oriented. And then meanwhile, there are a lot of sort of cart before the horse issues where, it's been 12 years to get this plan passed, but, to get the specifics of the plan, to get specific developmental plans building by building, you have to have a wider plan for the area. So it's sort of a catch-22, and that didn't sit well with Fund for a Better Waterfront. But nevertheless, it did pass unanimously 8-1 with one abstention. So here we are. It looks like it's going to move forward, and Hoboken's going to continue to grow. They're going to watch the development within those footprints up there, and keep an eye on the height variances and see what sort of situation comes up next. Hoboken's pretty good at keeping a tab on how high things go, and it'll certainly be an ongoing issue up north.
Chris, thank you. I think that was a very thorough description of the plan. Of course, there was 17 other things I think we wanted to chat about during these 12 minutes. We never have enough time. But as always, Chris, thank you for the thorough reporting that you're providing to our readers and to Tap into Hoboken and Tap into Jersey City. Keep feeling better, keep getting stronger. And with that, we're going to come back in a few minutes with Al Sullivan, our reporter for Tap into Jersey and Tap into Bayonne. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much. Take it easy.
Newport, the luxury waterfront community on the Hudson River, offers the quality of life you deserve in 10 high-rise rental towers with amenities such as the on-site Newport Path subway, light rail and ferry service, Newport Town Square, 3 playgrounds, dog run, upscale restaurants, retail giants like Sears, JCPenney, Macy's, and Target. Morton Williams Supermarket is just outside your front door. A health and fitness club, spa, skating rink, and medical facilities are also on site. NewportNJ.com. Enjoy the New York skyline from Newport Town Square. Manhattan is just one path stop away or quick ride through the Holland Tunnel. Nursery and private elementary schools all on site. 12-screen movie theater at the Newport Center Mall. Want to visit Newport? Stay at the Westin or Marriott Hotel. Go to NewportNJ.com for details. Newport has luxurious towers, great restaurants, shopping, New York skyline views, schools, playgrounds, a marina and yacht club, gym, spa, fine wine, fine living. It's incredible. It's you. NewportNJ.com. Newport, live like you want.
Hi, and welcome back to Tapped into Hoboken. I'm Steve Lenox, and I'm the publisher of Tap into Hoboken, Tap into Jersey City, and Tap into Bayonne. I walked off our last guest at the end of the segment, Chris Halleron, and we were supposed to be bringing Al Sullivan in, but the power of technology, sometimes we hit some roadblocks. we couldn't get out. So we're going to go right back to Chris. We're going to spend another few minutes with him. Plenty to talk about in Hoboken. Chris isn't there.
Again, so
there you are, Chris. How you doing? We're having some technical difficulties, but we're glad to have you back. Thank you.
That's all right. Plenty to talk about, and happy to be here. So.
There's plenty happening. Before we get into one of the other legislative issues that happened earlier this week, Chris, we're heading towards the first weekend of March, which traditionally was always the St. Patrick's Day parade in Hoboken. Of course, that was canceled some years ago. You and I actually had a hand in helping to organize the Hoboken Irish Festival, which went well for a few years. That kind of, didn't go away, but never materialized into what some hoped it would. And then Leprechaun sort of sprung up, didn't it? For anybody who doesn't know what Leprechaun is, why don't you give a bit of a description in a kind way?
In a kind way. Okay, well, that's a bit of a challenge. Leprechaun sort of took filled the void, if you will, that was the Hoboken St. Patrick's Day Parade. Hoboken St. Patrick's Day Parade was a 25-year event, a traditional Hoboken event that was a big hit in town till the point that it got too big, and there were a lot of issues that came from that. Being the first sort of St. Patrick's Day celebration in the New York metro area, and with Hoboken being a railhead for public transit and having a large number of bars, it created a situation where it became sort of a victim of its own success. And Hoboken St. Patrick's Day devolved from what was a nice family experience. My grandparents used to march in it with Court Street. So, it went from that where your grandparents could march down the street to a bit of a situation where there were a lot of arrests and a lot of calls for service and a lot of, pumping stomachs and public urination and vomit and fights and everything that goes with it. So in 2011, I believe that was the last of the official Hoboken St. Patrick's Day parades. There was a lot of back and forth between the committee to try to maintain it, but the Zimmer administration at the time wanted to move it to a weekday, and they could never come to an agreement there. So it fell apart, fell asunder. And Leprechaun, unfortunately, filled that void, which is just instead of having a celebration of Irish culture, it was just a free-for-all at the bar. Not a free-for-all, but a bar-centric event. And that became problematic over the past couple of years. This year, of course, just as recently as last year, there was a Leprechaun event, and it had sort of it was winding down a bit because it just sort of lost its luster. This year, obviously, with the COVID restrictions, it won't be happening at all.
Right. And that's, of course, a disappointment for the bars, but much of the past 12 months have been disappointments for the bars. I do think, Chris, it's important to say, and you kind of touched on it, of course, and I know you certainly thought about it, the negative aspects, I guess, of the parade of years past certainly, I don't think, fall on the parade organizers at all. I mean, the men and women that organize that parade year in and year out did a wonderful, fantastic job. I think it was kind of some of the celebration, as we might say, that went on around it, unfortunately. But Chris, beyond St. Patrick's Day, the other night they talked to the city council. I keep calling them they. The city council passed an ordinance to officially bring the city bike program together with Jersey cities and New York cities. That's a big deal for Hoboken, isn't it?
That's a huge deal, and it's been years in the making. Hoboken had the Hudson bike share program for a while, had its ups and downs. There were proponents, there were detractors, and then in the end, it made more sense to synergize with the other city bike situations they had in Jersey City and in New York City. So finally, after a lot of hemming and hawing and a lot of punting, if you will, they got it together, and they're going to start rolling it out, no pun intended, in the weeks and months to come. There are some hangups because there's going to be a small fleet of e-bikes that has a lot of people concerned because Hoboken's experience with e-scooters did not go well. There were a lot of concerns about running on sidewalks and on the waterfront and whatnot. So that's going to be a situation that will continue to be monitored over the weeks and months to come. And I'm sure social media will be abuzz with those topics.
And we'll keep an eye out on all of it. So, Chris, what we've talked about in the past 18 or so minutes, right? We talked about the fact that there's new North End redevelopment, which includes a light rail station. There's this e-bike program, which is expanding and is going to be bigger and better than ever. I mean, Hoboken more and more is trying to become more transportation friendly, isn't it? How is that going? I mean, it looks good on paper. Are we starting to see the impact of it in real life, so to speak?
That's tough to say because COVID has hit pause on a lot of these issues in Hoboken, that do look good on paper, but we're going to have to see how they're implemented. The economic impact is impossible to measure until COVID becomes something that we've moved beyond. But it looks like it's going in the right direction for those who are proponents of that. There are other people who have issues with, possibly, potential bike lanes on Washington Street. That's always been an issue that's been very passionately defended or refuted over the past couple of years, and will continue to be so. There's sort of a bike automobile clash going on, and it'll continue in the immediate future. But we'll see how it plays out. And right now, it looks like the transportation alternatives are winning, and it makes sense in a place like Hoboken to have other options because it's so densely populated and so tightly packed, and so much going on, and continues to pack more in. So this looks like it might be the smart way to go moving forward.
No, that's great, Chris. I mean, obviously, we're going to keep bringing more people into Hoboken. We can't have a successful city, a strong city, a healthy city. We can't move people around. Chris, thank you so much. It remains to be seen if you'll join us in the fourth segment or not. We'll see how our technology is working out. But so far, so good, Chris. Thank you so much for everything you've contributed already. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stevens Jersey City Ford, located right off of NJ 440 North. Across the Hudson Mall is your one-stop for all your automotive needs. Check out Ford's latest models like the 2020 Ford Fusion with its stylish looks and hybrid options, or the unparalleled high-performance 2020 Ford Mustang. The 2020 Ford F-150 Raptor is ready for those rugged off-road terrains with trail control. Need a mid-sized truck for your towing and hauling? The 2020 Ford Ranger will deliver. The 2020 Ford Escape is a luxury SUV that was made for comfort and adventure on the go. Returning is Ford's legendary Bronco, which takes you back to the true meaning of off-roading. They are now available for pre-order in our showroom or on our website. Let us help you find your next vehicle. Stevens Jersey City Ford, 201-432-7272.
Hi, welcome back to Tapped into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox. I'm the publisher of Tap into Hoboken, Tap into Bayonne, Tap into Jersey City. We just got over our technical problems and our Al Sullivan fans out there, and we know you're out there. We'll be happy to know that we did get Al. We've got him on the screen coming up next, and we're going to talk a little bit about Bayonne. Al, how you doing today? Thank you so much for sticking with us until we can get this technology to work.
Oh, yeah, it's my fault here. I'm doing very well.
Good, Al.
Bayonne might not be, but I am.
No, we're doing great. What I want to talk to you about, Al, before we get into any hard-hitting stories, you wrote a great story earlier this week about a movie that was filmed in Bayonne, a movie called Last Call, which has a pretty significant cast. Jeremy Piven, Taryn Manning, Jamie Kennedy, some great stars. But the way you told the story, Al, I mean, you gave the theme of this movie, the producer walking into this old-time Irish pub in Bayonne and saying, this is it. This is where I need to film this movie. Tell me about that. Tell our readers about that. Anybody who hasn't seen the story yet.
Well, the fact is the movie is about a developer, and there was a real developer who went back to his hometown, and he found that he had to knock down the bar where he grew up. And he decided that to start gathering the characters for some future event. And then the director came along and they rewrote it into a script. But they needed a blue-collar town as a backdrop, and they need to be near New York because of their budget concerns. So what they did is they came to Bayonne looking for a bar, and they stumbled into an Irish bar, and they suddenly gelled with these people. Then they found a similar bar elsewhere in town that had a similar history to their bar that they were trying to reflect. But the bigger issue was the fact that they had walked into the same situation in Bayonne that the real bar that they were trying to pay from in a fictional form was facing, and that is gentrification that's slowly ending that lifestyle. And the director went off in a way that I didn't expect. I started raising questions, and he started answering them and saying this is a universal theme. And it just coincidentally that across the street was one of the biggest projects in Bayonne from the bar. So they sort of caught on to something that was bigger than just the film. It was about a way of life that seems to be ending, and how do you save that? And and he texted me this morning about it and said, well, hey, great story. And he said, but you're the one who did it, because you went off in a direction I never expected.
And Al, that story, of course, you kind of touched on a little bit, but maybe danced around. That story is, this conflict. I don't want to say battle, but this conflict that we've seen in city after city. New Hoboken versus Old Hoboken, New Jersey City versus Old Jersey City. Now we're seeing it in Bayonne, New Bayonne versus Old Bayonne. And you've got leaders like Mayor Davis that are trying so hard to bring it all together. But as the director said, this is the future of cities, right? I mean, cities have to redevelop, or else what happens to them? Yeah. I mean, that's what this movie's about. And that's what I think you captured in the story.
Right.
Al, thank you. I mean, that was a great story.
Point. And what the hope. Sure. Go ahead.
No, go on. You finish your thought. Go on, please.
Well, the note, what he left it on a hopeful note. He said that maybe Bayonne, in working it out, can do what other towns have not been able to do, which is to strike that balance. I'm not sure it can, because the conflicts are already emerging. But he raised that point, and that was a really good point to have raised, that maybe there is hope after all.
I think it'll be amazing on March 19th when this movie comes out. Last Call is coming out in theaters. It's coming out. It's going to be streaming, but it'll really be a good lesson for all of us to watch it and see up on the screen what's happening in real life. Al, I'm giving you about 90 seconds to talk about some political conflict that erupted earlier this week. It seems Mayor Davis and Assemblyman Nicholas Chevroletti, formerly, pretty close allies, are going in different directions, I think, so to speak. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, Mayor Davis decided he was not going to support Nicholas's election as a Democrat on the ticket. And in Hudson County, unlike other places in the state, the mayors have the final call. The dispute is still in question as to why it happened. Mayor Davis is not being forthright this conflict, but he has dispelled some of the massive amount of rumors that are going around. But essentially, the Democrats, despite the governor's protests and the head of the state assembly protests, they are going along with Davis, and he will reappoint somebody else to the ticket.
That's interesting. A few weeks ago, I had Chairwoman Amy DeGison and Chairman Jose Arango on, and then they talked about the need to sort of come together. And unfortunately, we have a breaking apart. Unfortunately for some, I mean, maybe I shouldn't analyze the race. Al, I want to thank you, though, because you talked about the fact that there's a lot of rumors out there. And Al, thank you for not reporting on the rumors. We need to stick with the facts when we're reporting local news, and that's something you've been doing so well. So I'm sort of taking executive privilege here in our last 10 seconds, as I did with Chris. Thank you for the hard work you're doing. Thank you for the truthful, honest news that you're producing for our readers. I appreciate everything you've done for Tap into Bayonne, Tap into Jersey City, Tap into Hoboken. You've even branched out a little bit. Al, we're going to have you on the show again soon. Until then, keep producing the great stories. And thank you so much. And stay healthy, please. Thank you.
Thank you. As long as my technology holds out. Thank you.